Alright, today we're doing the A51 versus the S20 fan edition. So you may not want to spend 600 bucks. You may be satisfied with the A51 if you were looking at the FE, or the A51 might not be enough and you might want to spend that extra money to get the S20. So this is right now at around 280 right now. I'll put the links down below. The S20 FE is fairly new, so it's still around 600 bucks. I'll put the links down below. So let's go ahead and get started. As you can see with the design, they both kind of look alike, but they are both plastic phones. Actually, they both have the plastic back on here, but the S20 definitely feels a little bit more premium in the hand. It definitely has much more weight to it as well, and the compared to the A51 just feels really light compared to the S20, which I think gives it that more premium feel, the heavier it feels. But some people like that, some people don't. Really comes down to you. Now you have these sort of psychedelic color shift on the A51 that looks really good. It looks really cool. They have sort of the same camera module. As you can see, the S20 has a bit more of a raise. It's a little bigger, a little thicker, but they both kind of look similar. So you do have sort of a plain design on the S20 FE. Now they went with this plastic design, I guess, to bring the price down. It also makes it a little bit more durable. So if you're just wondering why a $600 phone has a plastic back, coming to the side you have the same button layout, your power button, volume rocker. Down below you'll find the speaker. Now you do have stereo speakers on the S20, USB Type-C, but you do not have a headphone jack on the S20. You do have that on the A51. Alright, so let's talk about the display. So on the A51 you have a Super AMOLED. It's a 6.5 inch display, 1080p 405 for the PPI. And on the S20 you have a Super AMOLED 120 Hz display, also a 6.5 inch 1080p 407 for the PPI. Now what you'll notice is that you actually have a little bit more bezel on the S20. So the bezel percentage is, I believe, 84.8%, and then on the A51 it's 87.4%. So you'll see a little bit more bezel on the S20 down here and up here. So that is one strange thing that I kind of noticed. Now they both have the punch hole in the middle, which looks really good. I really love that implementation. I think it's the next best thing to the notch. Now they pretty much look identical in terms of quality. They're basically giving off the same colors, so it's not a huge difference, or really any difference with the displays that I can see, really. And they both look really good whether you're watching movies, whatever. They're very nice, very bright and color accurate displays, so I really don't see any kind of difference here. Now where you will notice that display difference is with the 120 Hertz on the S20. It's just super smooth when you're scrolling and stuff like that. I mean, you could really tell the difference from a 60 Hertz display here. Now that it's not the biggest thing for people. If you're not really into high refresh rates, then it's not going to matter to you, but it does make a huge difference to me just with the experience on how smooth it is. So both these phones are running Android 10 with the One UI skin, of course, and you will see a difference when it comes to toggle. So you have the Samsung DeX support on here, so the desktop experience on the S20, so that is really nice. And you do have wireless power share on the S20 as well. You have that toggle here. You do not have the Samsung DeX on here, but you do have secured folder, and this phone does not support the wireless power share, but everything else is pretty much the same. You have all of the same features. Now on the A51 you have the Exynos 9611 processor and the Mali G72. Micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM on the base model. On the S20 you have the Exynos 990, the Mali G77, micro SD support, 128 gigs of storage on the base model and 6 gigs of RAM. So basically the S20 should be faster, but let's see how much faster it will be. And we'll go ahead and run the benchmark 2 as well. Let's go ahead and open up some apps, Subway Surfer. we're already set to go. So you can see it is a big difference when it comes to speed here when you're launching games and stuff like that. YouTube, good to go. So you can see the difference here. Now this is a noticeable difference. Most of the time when we do these speed tests, you don't see a huge difference, but this is noticeable. Boom, already in. Now these Exynos processors, if they put a Snapdragon in the A51, then it probably wouldn't be that much difference. Now there's two variants. I get this question almost every time I post a video. There's the Exynos version of this, and there's the Snapdragon 865 version. This is not the Snapdragon 865, but probably really kill it if I had that version. So let's go Play Store. Okay. So basically a little bit, or well, a lot faster. Let's go ahead and run the Geekbench scores here. All right, so as you can see, these scores, big difference when it comes to these two scores on the single and on the multi-core. It is just a huge difference, and you can see how it compares to some other devices with the Snapdragon chip as well. So let's go ahead and check out some gaming on both of these devices. All right, so let's check out the graphics. The S20 at the bottom. Graphics, we have HDR and we have ultra frame rates on the A51. We have the same settings here, so no difference. So both of these phones, well, the S20 can't do extreme, so if you have the Snapdragon version, you will be able to do extreme frame rates, but yeah. So the Mali processor, it's just not going to be as good as the Adreno. They both pretty much look the same and pretty much play the same. Yeah, I'm not seeing any real difference now. With gaming, the S20 has the 120 Hz, so if you download a game that's compatible with the 120 Hz, you will notice a much smoother experience with gaming. So that is one thing that you should consider. Alright, so you do have stereo speakers on the S20 FE, and you just have a single fiber speaker on the A51. Let's see if we can hear the difference. So the S20 is much louder, as we would expect. And I was getting a little bit, yeah, there's just more bass presence on the S20. It's just overall just sounds better. And I was getting a little bit of distortion. You can hear a little bit of distortion when you max out the volume on the A51. But if you're in a loud environment, you definitely will be able to hear both of these phones no problem. Okay, let's talk about some additional features before we get to the cameras. So you do have an IP rating on the S20. You have an IP68 rating on here, so you can get this phone wet. The A51, you do not have any kind of rating, so if you get it wet, most likely will break. Now you do have the headphone jack on the A51. Once you get to this price bracket, they want you to buy wireless earbuds pretty much once you get up into the flagship kind of phones. So you do have NFC on both of these phones as well, and the fingerprint scanner is under the glass on both of these phones. So let's see which one is faster. You also have face unlock on both of these phones as well. Yeah, it's not by much. Yeah, it's not by much, but the A51's fingerprint sensor is definitely not as fast as the S20. Yeah, it's like almost instant. You guys see that? Now watch. See, it's just like a hair slower. But they both work fine, no issues. They work 100% of the time, so no real issues. Alright, let's get into the camera. So, you have a triple camera setup on the S20. It's a 12 megapixel wide, 8 megapixel telephoto, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. You also have 4K 30 or 60 FPS video, a 32 megapixel selfie camera that shoots in 4K 30 or 60 FPS. You have a quad camera setup on the A51. It's a 48 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, and a 5 megapixel depth sensor, 4K video, 30 FPS, selfie camera is 4K 30 FPS, and you have these 32 megapixel selfie camera with 1080p video. Basically, you will have better frames and better video on the S20 for sure. But when it comes to photos, you do get a little bit better detail on the S20. Is one of the first things I noticed. Dynamic range, everything is just really pops on the S20. Just tons of detail. And as you can see, the A51 really hangs in there with this phone. It's not really that far off from the S20. As you can see, color is a little bit oversaturated, I guess, on the A51. It gives off like a little bit more vivid color, and the S20 is a little bit more lifelike, especially outdoors. Now indoors, they both pretty much look identical. Alright, so for the battery on the A51, you have a 4,000 milliamp battery with 15 watt fast charging. On the S20, you have a 4,500 milliamp battery with 25 watt fast charging. You also have wireless charging on here as well at 15 watts, and you have reverse wireless charging on the S20 FE. So definitely you just have a ton of features with the S20. So if all of those things interest you, wireless charging is very convenient, and the reverse wireless charging. So if I want to charge another phone with the S20, I could do that, or earbuds, whatever. And that is a really awesome feature to have. And plus, this phone charges so much more faster than the A51 at 15 watts. So that's pretty much what you're getting, for the extra $300. So you really have to narrow it down to, the pros and cons. So again, going back to battery life, both of these phones actually do an excellent job. I have really no issue with battery life on both of these phones. I can easily squeeze out 8 hours of sort of like hard use on both of these phones, easy. Now, if you get the 5G version of this, you will definitely not get that, 8 hours of screen on time. But yeah, so if you're just on 4G, these phones really last all day, if not a day and a half. So be sure to let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.